Kyle, let me start with this. Give me something from 56-7 that you think matters against Texas. What did you see Bama do against Middle Tennessee that you think transfers into Saturday night?
Well, I think when you look back at the game against Middle, you see a couple things that Alabama wanted to see on their checklist. And they're simple things, and I get it. They're like, well, it's Middle Tennessee. I get that. We all understand that. Trust me. But what we wanted to see from Alabama was, can Jalen Milroe throw the football down the field 25 yards and be accurate? Yes, he did that. Can the Alabama wide receivers catch the football? I know it sounds mundane, but during the fall time, even against Texas last year, there was a lot of drops. Yes, they were able to catch the football. How is the defense going to look? Can they get pressure? Now, Middle Tennessee, I'm telling you, they got the football out immediately, but they still were able to get some heat in situations on the quarterback. So check on that. How did they do in open field tackling? Under Kevin Steele, would this make a huge difference? They were able to tackle an open field. So a couple of those check marks that we wanted to see in week one. Another one and two is like, how many penalties is this going to have? Against Texas last year, they're penalty plagued. They had 2 penalties for 18, 19 yards. So those check marks that people wanted to see in week one, where you have to have kind of your head on straight going against Middle, a lesser opponent, less caliber, as Coach Saban said, they hit all those check marks going into week 2.
Gotcha. Kyle, I don't know if you know this. Texas fans are confident. We had a 36-17.
Yeah.
We had a 36-17 prediction earlier. Mm-hmm. The general consensus among Texas fans, no matter what I say, tends to be Quinn Ewers torched Alabama while he was in the game last year. So that's automatically going to happen this year.
Yeah.
And he's going to be better than Jalen Milroe, and Texas wins by 2 scores.
Sure. I think Texas fans have every right to be really excited about this team. I mean, Coach Saban has said that it's a high-level caliber coming in. I think everybody knows that. I mean, last year I think people were suspect about Texas overall. Not this time around. I think Coach Sark, I was listening to his press conference, and people were asking him, was that a measuring stick about how well you played Alabama? Maybe so. Look, I think Texas is going to be better this time around. It's going to be difficult because of the environment that they're playing at. But it's another opportunity to kind of gauge that measuring stick, and they have the weapons to do it. Let's face it. I mean, Ewers is a very good quarterback, and I get it. He didn't have the best downfield performance, but he does have weapons that are going to really challenge Alabama in the secondary. And I do have an injury report for everybody. I just posted it on my YouTube channel. But Malachi Moore, who's a starting star position player, he is day-to-day. Jalen Key, who is a starting safety, who is very good. He had an interception last week. He is day-to-day. Kool-Aid, who was banged up. It looked like he was banged up on punt return. You saw his helmet fly off. He's okay. Talked to him after the game. So those guys are day-to-day. You also have Jahad Campbell, who's going to be inside linebacker. He had his knee scoped before Alabama's first game. He's good to go as well. I don't know the percentage level, like 100%, if Malachi Moore or Jalen Key are going to be 100%, but those guys, I would expect them to be probable for Saturday's game. But yeah, Texas, they should have a lot of confidence. I mean, Sarkisian is the real deal for sure. Texas, outside of, the running back that they lost last year, like this team is completely loaded, and Alabama still has to answer a lot of questions. That was Middle Tennessee. This is Texas coming in. Jalen Milroe still has to prove himself. After the game, he said, yes, I have to work on a lot of things, but with that small sample size, we were impressed, honestly. Now, you do have Tyler Buckner, who did get a couple reps during the third or fourth quarter or whatever it was, but Jalen Milroe is the guy. Texas does feel that they have the better quarterback, and I think if you looked collectively who is the better quarterback, people would probably feel Ewers is, but if you asked Alabama fans, I mean, this guy is an absolute playmaker, and by the way he threw the deep ball, it was exceptional, to be honest. So Texas fans are confident. They should be. And, Vegas thinks it's going to be close. What is it, 6.5 right now, the last time I checked?
Yeah, 6.5, 7, right around there.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, is there an element of this game? Fear is not the right word, right? If I say what would Alabama be scared of? Nothing. That's not probably the right way to propose the question. Is there anything that they're leery about from the matchup between both sides of the football against each other? Is there a Texas strength against an Alabama question mark that you guys are especially talking about this week?
I think it continues to center around, the weapons at the wide receiver position. I mean, Coach Saban just said this morning on his weekly SEC teleconference that Xavier Worthy is one of the best wide receivers in the entire country, which I agree with. He's a matchup problem. I think Terrion Arnold is going to get picked on, or at least are going to try to pick on him. He's, you have Kool-Aid on one side and you have Terrion Arnold on the other, and you're going to go after those guys. You're going to make them prove that they can stop this Texas offense. You have Sanders, the guy at tight end. Who's going to cover him from Alabama? Is it going to be a freshman by the name of Caleb Downs, who was the SEC Freshman of the Week? I mean, that guy's he's playing at a very high level, but when the bullets start flying, is he going to be able to play at that high level against an NFL-type player? So people are talking about kind of that offensive attack. And then, of course, with Quinn last year, they're like, well, what would happen if he stayed in that game the entire time? We don't know that. What happened last game was he didn't play the entire time. He's a very capable quarterback. I like his short game. I like the motion that Sark is able to use in the backfield. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Kyle Shanahan on a baby scale. Texas is good. So people keep, talking about this Texas offense. And then also, is Alabama's offense, can they move the football on the ground? And is Jalen Milroe for real? And I think even with that small sample size, people are like, yeah, that was against Middle Tennessee. Let's see what he can do against Texas. So I think, people are taking Texas for real. And at the same token, they're like, the players, I think, too, are like, all right, yeah, Texas, come on, let's do it. And I think the defense is excited to showcase their pass rush because you have Dallas Turner, who's a first-round draft pick. Q Robinson, write that number down, number 34. He's going to be bringing it as well as Chris Broswell. These are your guys coming off the edge. And Alabama has to get pressure. And if they can get pressure on Quinn, I think they win this football game. Those guys are they're very dynamic. Deontay Lawson, an inside linebacker, is going to be coming as well. Alabama's defense is good, and they want to prove they're good, and this is a great opportunity to do it against a high-flying Texas team.
It's a massive matchup, especially with the interior of the Texas offensive line not looking great against Rice. Speaking of, you mentioned confidence, Kyle, in this game. There's going to be a lot of it on both sides, I think. But we were talking at the beginning of the show today about the confidence with Quinn Ewers that fans have. We've been asking them for their confidence meter, 1 to 10 with Quinn Ewers, and we've gotten a lot of different answers. What do you think a Bama fan would say to us today? Confidence meter, 1 to 10 on Jalen Milroe after what they've seen so far and knowing that Texas is coming to town. Where do you think most Alabama fans would land if we got the truth serum in them, 1 to 10?
Probably 6.5 out of 10, honestly. They're like, and I think before that, it was probably like 4.5. They knew that he could get out and run, and he's the fastest player on the field and probably the best athlete on the field at all times. But they're like, can he throw the football downfield? So I think that moved up a little bit. But after this game, that could go to 10 or beyond that. The way that he's handled himself in media opportunities has been stellar. I think he's one of the best interviews that we've had since I've been covering Alabama. He's very humble. He's saying the right things, but he's not boring. He's having fun with it. He's excited. He said that, he used to have a Vince Young jersey, and he has family he has immediate family members who are Texas fans. So he was having fun with that. But yeah, I would say, previous this game, like 4.5, now 6.5. So they're starting to get a little bit more confidence, but such a small sample size.
Okay.
Kyle, we had somebody earlier today. By the way, this was my favorite of the chat's messages so far. Kyle H, greater than fine, bum. We also had the second favorite was from Arrogant Ass Clown, who says this guy has more confidence than Ketch.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, that's hard to do.
How very arrogant of you, ass clown.
Yeah.
How much slack does Milroe come into this game with? If it's 3-3 at halftime, are they sticking with Milroe? Is there a sense that he's living on the edge? I know that when we go back to what Saban said in one of his last press conferences before the season started, was like, you guys think that the end of the finish line is when the season starts and that things can't change once the season starts. What does he have in the way of slack to work with on Saturday in a game where the Alabama offense struggles early on?
Yeah, that's a good question. And you're right. Saban said that, just because whoever's the first game quarterback doesn't dictate the rest of the season. Hard to say that when the guy's the SEC player of the week on the offensive side of the ball and comes out just balling out of control. I think that they look at the quarterback room if there starts to be turnovers. Interception. 2 interceptions, I think you start to get Tyler Buchner warmed up. And listen, Coach Saban isn't afraid to pull you out and put the best player in. I promise you. He's not worried about your feelings at all. Look, earlier people were saying that Saban bullies like the media or whatever. Like, I don't think Saban even thinks about what's going on other than that, the fact he's just so dialed in the game plan and winning the game. I don't think any of those external factors matter at all. But I think if he can play at a consistent level, and if it is 3-3 and he hasn't committed a turnover and he's more, let's say, less efficient than he was in week 1, I think they still ride with him just because of his playmaking ability. Let's not forget that first touchdown that he had was probably one of the best plays in college football. Name a better one, right? Like, play breaks down, he's able to get the football, and then he turns into the best player on the field offensively, and he scores a touchdown. That was like, Alabama fans, I think, were like screaming and also mad because they're like, can he throw the ball? And then he came back and he balls out throwing 3 deep touchdown passes. We talked about that catch with his passing rating to the outside left, center, and to the outside right were nearly perfect with passes downfield. So yeah, he has some slack to work with, but I think the turnovers are 2. And if he gets 2 turnovers, I think they start to look to the bench and give Tyler Buchner an opportunity. And look, Texas defense, they did play opportunistic last week. What did they have? 2 interceptions against Rice?
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Real quick, you think it would be Buchner over Simpson?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, that was kind of determined last week going into the game. One of your rivals guys broke it, Tony Tsoukalos, who does a great job. By the way, Tony has great scoop. So if you're part of the rivals family, and I know there's 50 Bama sides to choose from, Tony Tsoukalos doing a great job. Plus, he's from the Woodlands too. So go support your Texas guys. And he does a great job. But he broke the news that Tyler Buchner would be number 2, and he was the second guy to play at quarterback. Ironically, Milroe ran for 2 touchdowns. Buchner ran for a touchdown. And then Ty Simpson, he ran for a touchdown too. So, that was kind of an interesting note.
Nice. By the way, Kyle, speaking of giving the Texas folks love, some of our friends in San Marcos would probably tell you that catch down the sideline, that one-handed catch for Texas State at Baylor, that might have been the play of the weekend. But your point is made on Milroe and Bama because they made some great plays as well. Yep. As we get ready for this game, there's so many crazy elements to it. Let me go to this, though. Let me go to the thing that Bama fans are not thinking about, because I think deep down in their soul, Texas fans know they can lose this game. I'm predicting they're going to lose this game, but I think there's something they could take from that. Mm-hmm. Give me the Bama fan side of it, though. Fill in the blank for me. Texas beating Alabama Saturday night means blank.
Means that Steve Sarkisian is getting the biggest contract in college football history, right? And I think that Texas has arrived, and I think that catapults Texas to places that Texas Longhorn fans have wanted to be, since whenever. And I think that's probably going to happen if they can avoid some of those late season trap games. I looked on the schedule against Iowa State and Texas Tech. Those are difficult games to win. Even if they beat Alabama, I think they probably lose one of those games just because those are difficult trap games. But yeah, I think a win like this is such a measuring stick for every program that wants to get to that level. And just like Coach Saban said, you want to be the beast, you got to do what the beasts do. And that is beating Alabama. There's a program that has beaten Alabama recently in Georgia, and look where Georgia is. Right? Georgia sits atop of this college football mountain. Former assistant in Kirby Smart on the defensive side. That was a DC. If Sark can do that, I think he takes Texas Longhorns to new levels. It works for recruiting. It works on so many levels. So yeah, if they're able to beat Alabama, I think this catapults Texas to places they want to go, especially, coming into the SEC.
Kyle, we've got a super chat. You had a couple of badass super chats the other day. Here's one from our guy, Tom G. Reasons to be optimistic for Texas. Quinn, elite short to intermediate game. Mm-hmm. Texas O-line versus Alabama D-line equals last year. Not as much experience for Bama on D front 7. Mm-hmm. Texas similar ground game to last year. I'm sorry. Couldn't make my way all the way through it. Milroe, biggest game at home. Pressure's on him. Please unpack.
Yeah, what's difficult is reading some of these super chats, like how the sentence structure, like live on air, right? Sometimes because, and you're right, like I have Elizabeth Reed, who's basically built my whole studio. So on the next show, which is tonight, I hope she's there. So I appreciate it. elite short game passing. Yeah, I'll say that. That checks. Texas offensive line versus Alabama last year. Last year doesn't dictate this year. Alabama's defensive line is really good. Notate this, Jaheim Otis, who's been working at defensive tackle. They've been working him at defensive end. That was taking place last week against Middle. Jaheim Otis came to Alabama. He was like 380 pounds. Now he's down to like a slim 330, trying to be a little bit more athletic. He's really good and something to watch. I think Alabama's front seven, their edge rushers are fantastic. And I think, as I said earlier, I think that's what the game could potentially come down to, is if they are able to get pressure on Quinn. Dallas Turner, as I said, you guys know all about him. Chris Broswell, former 5-star. Q Robinson, probably a sleepy third-round NFL draft pick in the draft coming up. And their secondary is very talented. Now, granted, if they are healthy, that's going to contribute to the game as well, chasing down Texas first-round draft picks all over the place. Milroe, biggest game at home, pressure on him. Yeah, there's pressure on him. There's pressure on everybody. And this is a huge opportunity for Jalen Milroe to silence all those critics. If he can block out the external factors and just be the player that he is and not have to be Bryce Young, not have to be Tua Tagovailoa, not have to be Jalen Hurts, not have to be Mac Jones. Be Jalen Milroe, bro. Like there's this notion out there that if you're able to run and throw, that you're not a quarterback. No, go to the NFL. Like that's the next wave. That's it, like be you. That like be your game. Be authentic. And if he can be authentic and be himself and just do what he does, I mean, that's going to silence everybody. And that meter from 6.5 will go through the roof, 10.5 or whatever for the rest of the season.
So, Kyle is clearly a gentleman. He skipped right over the Texas part. Let's address that. Texas, similar ground game to last year. Look, Tom, I appreciate the Ulysses S. Grant. You are the man. We appreciate you helping out and throwing something in the tip jar. Ketch, can you explain those words to me?
Texas, similar ground game to last year?
What? Huh? What?
That was the part that threw me for a little bit of a loop.
I'm so confused. Like, does he mean if you're saying you feel like this running back room compares to last year's running back room, that's silly. If you're making the argument that they'll do what they did last year, okay. But I mean, they ran 33 times for 79 yards, 2.4 average. Are you saying that will win this game? Or I'm confused. I just don't understand. I mean, out of respect for Bijan and Roshan, I just don't understand why you would type those words.
Kyle, what is your take on – I even had somebody yesterday, this same topic came up where it was like the Texas offensive line versus the Alabama D-line. There's this – Texas fans are convinced that they won that battle. Mm-hmm. And my whole take is, well, no, it was an Alabama defensive lineman who knocks Quinn Ewers out of the game. And ultimately, that play defines what – happens for the rest of the game. From an Alabama perspective, how did you guys take in that game last year with regards to what we're talking about here? The Bama front seven against this Texas front offensive line, kind of the physical matchup of it all. Now what Tom says here is correct. What I mean is the Texas ground game against Bama was not great, and we could at least do that again.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, if that's what you meant, I got you. All right, just making sure. I just want to make sure. Fair enough. That's fair, Tom. That's fair.
Teams that have been able to give Alabama fits over the last 2 seasons have been able to go up tempo and be able to have playmakers on the outside, and they've been able to get the football to those playmakers. Nobody comes into Bryant-Denny Stadium and runs the football down Alabama's throat. That's not going to happen. Texas wins if they're able to throw the football efficiently for 4 quarters. The running game, it doesn't matter. I don't care who your running back is. Go look it up. When's the last time a running back ran all over Alabama? I don't know who it is. It's probably going to be some like running back from Ole Miss that we don't necessarily know about or something like that in one of those weird games. You got to be able to throw the football, period. And LSU was able to do that last year. Tennessee was able to do that last year. Tennessee threw a touchdown to one receiver 5 different times last year. Right? Like, that's crazy. But it happened. They're like, hey, cover him. And he scored again and again and again and again and again. So, yeah, you're right. It's not going to be, and then I think, like, getting back to the O-line versus D-line last year, I don't look at anything from last year and carry over it to this year. That doesn't matter. What happened last year is like what happened yesterday doesn't matter today. No. Like that doesn't matter at all. Those players are different in that regard. But from what I understand, Texas O-line is very good. I think we have a small measuring stick of where they stand. Same thing with Alabama's pass rush. So, we're going to gain a lot more sample size from that. But I do know that Alabama's front seven, those edge rushers are very, very dominant, probably some of the best in college football, if not the best unit overall in college football. Alabama's strength is the edge rushers on this team. Like that is if you were, we all used to play NCAA football. Like if you were listing out like A+, they're A++ in that regard.
All right, Kyle, I have a question, but I want to make sure I'm asking it in the right context. What's the first season where you were in the stadium covering Alabama football?
That was 2017.
2017. Mm-hmm. Okay. That means you would have seen the LSU team come in 19, that championship team, and beat Bama there.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Tell me when you knew. Tell me when during that game did you think to yourself, wow, this team can beat Bama?
Probably, I don't know, like third quarter or something like that. I mean, that game was one of the best football games I've ever seen. And if you look back at that roster, everybody went to the NFL, right? Joe Burrow completely balled out, and he was able to get the weapons, able to get his football to the weapons because like they had guys everywhere and it was speed to burn and there was kick returns. I mean, that was an NFL type game. But going into that game, people respected LSU and what they were doing, and they came into Bryant-Denny and they took it to Alabama. Now, they didn't blow Alabama out by any means. It was back and forth. But, yeah, that team was salty. And then before that, you have, Johnny Manziel was able to come in here and do his thing against number 1 ranked Alabama at that point. But the guys who were able to put it on Alabama, you got to be able to have a quarterback that can sling it around the field and a quarterback who's just not afraid of the big game atmosphere. This stadium, it is sleepy because the fans are so spoiled. However, that game against LSU, it got loud. It can get very intimidating. They added these new LED lights that they're very excited about. It's kind of like a DJ spinning it in the third and the fourth quarter. People get amped up. People are really excited about this game, and that's something that Coach Saban has been harping on. Talking heads have been talking on is like the fans need to get loud and get into this game because the players said, and talking to them, the atmosphere in Austin last year really dictated the tone of a lot of that game. I think it was very challenging for Alabama to go in that type of atmosphere and to play in Austin. That place was electric, and I certainly think that impacted a lot of that game.
I think you're exactly right, Kyle. I think one of the things that hasn't been a talking point at all is this week has been just how crazy of an atmosphere. That may have been the best atmosphere at DKR in 30 years. You have to go back to games like U of H in 1990, really rare moments where I think the place was absolutely on fire. Before we let you go, I wanted to ask you about and it's funny because Tom brought it up in the chat, in our specs chat, and I'll say it here. So like he trusts our tackles to handle for most of the game. The interior is the only area I worry about. Mm-hmm. So last week, the interior of that Texas offensive line did not do a good job against Rice. One of the things that Rice did, they ran some stunts with their ends and their tackles. It wasn't rocket science, but created some confusion. And they always seem to bring an extra bit of pressure from the linebacker position, just right up the middle, trying to disrupt what Texas was doing. It got home a few times. They were able to sack Quinn Ewers a little bit. Paint a picture for me, because you brought up number 34. What is his name again?
Quindarius Robinson.
It sounded like he could be a guy if the same thing were to ring true and Alabama is trying to create pressure up the middle. Is he the guy that's going to come?
Yeah, so what they were able to do, so they have him, so Quindarius Robinson is the second guy at the outside linebacker position behind Chris Broswell. But he's so athletic, what they're able to do is they have him on the outside edge, and he comes across the center, and he goes directly towards the quarterback, and he's very effective because he's long, lanky, and he's fast. On top of that, they're going to send up the middle Deontay Lawson, who is a very capable inside linebacker. He's a signal caller, and he's just as dangerous. So I think he had a sack last week. So Deontay Lawson, inside linebacker, coming straight towards you, and And then when they do stunts, it's going to be Q Robinson because he has a speed. Those guys are going to be very effective. Texas, that interior, if it's soft at all, those guys are coming with it 100%. And you better be able to have a capable running back or some sort of H-back that can pick up that pressure because those guys will get to you.
Kyle, official prediction. Do you have one in yet? How do you handle that part?
Well, I looked at the over-under. I think, was it 52 or something like that? And I think that Alabama, somebody said, 54. Thank you so much. And then do we have an official line? Was it 6.5 or was it, someone said 7.5 in the comment box, whatever it is. I have Alabama winning this game. Okay, 7.5. So it's moved up a little bit. I'll take Alabama 31-24. And, I think it's going to be tight. I think the first team to get to – I don't see like this back and forth seesaw. Then again, when I think about Jalen Milroe, maybe you could. So put me down. My A score is that, and my B score is 38-37 Bama.
Wow.
Either way, those are two good shows for everyone.
I'm telling you, yeah, like have your popcorn and have your beef jerky and all your stuff, all your snacks, because it's going to be fun. I promise you.
What did JJ just say? 59-17.
Yeah, what? It's going to be, okay, Texas Rolls, yeah. There's going to be a lot of points, yeah.
Hey, real quick, Kyle, before we let you go, Chad came up with some stats, and it may be that you know some of these stats off like the back of your hand because it's your job. But did you know that Alabama has not lost a game at home in 12 years when they've had a lead in a game? Lead.
Yeah, there's all sorts of weird stats like that. Yeah, I mean, it's like they haven't lost to an unranked opponent since like 2005 and this and that. Yeah, it's like, I mean, and it used to be there. The stats used to be even stranger when you look to the SEC competition. That's why when they lost to Tennessee and LSU last year, like a lot of businesses took hits last year because like that was the first time that Alabama was out of the playoffs by November. Usually, like I'm serious. Right. People were like, "Oh, Alabama's done." Like they're like the Sugar Bowl. Are you serious? I mean, I remember I told you this before. The last time I went to a non-playoff was going to the Citrus Bowl. It was like underneath me. I couldn't even take my nice little blazer that I have here. I'm used to covering the playoffs and natties. Yeah.
He just wore like basic golf shirts to go to the Citrus Bowl.
Is this Orlando? Yeah. No,
oh my God, that's crazy. Yeah, that was a wild stat when I realized. Obviously, we deal with a lot of Texas and Texas A&M talk here, and I realized, wait a minute. When the Aggies went there in 2012, 3 teams have won there since that year, since 2012. Yeah. All 3 of them led the entire way.
Yeah. Yep.
So you got to go in, you got to get the lead, and you cannot let Bama have any lead. Otherwise, the numbers say you're going to lose. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a tough environment to play in. That's why, Texas has every right to be confident. I think this team is definitely for real. But Bryant-Denny Stadium, it's a tough place to play. And, their head coach is pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. He's decent.
He's not bad.
Last question. I lied. I got one more. You noticed earlier this week, Anwar and Steve Sarkisian had an interesting exchange. You ever have one of those with Saban? Have you ever had a moment where Saban just didn't like what you said, came after you at all? Like, ever cross paths with Darth Saban?
I haven't personally, but so how the media room is set up and how the questions are orchestrated on Wednesday night is where you're going to get your most heat, because that is when Coach Saban is sending his message. So the rotation works like this. Your number one reporter who asks, like a straightforward question about an injury or about how did this guy play last game? That guy gets the first question. And then the second guy, it's like a batting order. But the 9th guy who gets the question is the guy who doesn't articulate well or says something that pisses Saban off, and they put him in the 9 spot. I promise you, this is your right fielder in Little League, and they put him in there, and he asked this question like, I don't know, something about, hey, coach, what are the chances that 2 quarterbacks play? Or hypothetically, if you're losing by, a field goal, do you go in and, go for a touchdown? And then what that does is Saban's able to just bury into that reporter, and then he's able to do like, God, what else? And then he just walks off and he like mic drops. But it's set up by design. Like all these rants, it's the last question always. So when you cut it and when you see it on social media, you don't know when it is. But since somebody who's always at the press conference, that's how it's designed. So it's the right fielder in Little League who's going to ask that question for the designed walk-off. I promise you.
So Kyle and all his friends are texting each other, question 8. Question 9.
Yeah, here it comes. It's just
10.
and it happens every time. So tonight, it's the 9 spot. It's coming. I promise you.
The 9 hitter.
Funny.
It's the 9 hitter catch.
The thing is, does the 9 hitter know he's the 9 hitter?
Yes. And you can get moved up in the season. So it's just like Saban's depth chart. Like you can start at 9. It's not etched in stone. So that person, I've seen them come up, to like the 6th spot. Nobody has gone from number 9 to like the number 4 spot or anything like that. But you can move up. But we have a reporter who's kind of like Ichiro. He leads off our first question, always on base, boom, first. So it's never a blow up at the first question, never, 0% chance.
That's funny.
It's a 9. It's the 9 holes, the right fielder.
And Kyle Henderson has never been a right fielder in his entire life. Shortstop, batting cleanup or leadoff. He's done that with us for weeks now leading up to this game. Kyle Henderson, follow him, Bama Football on YouTube all the way through the rest of this week. Next week, the season will be in the conference together starting in 2024. You've worked your way up into cleanup status, Kyle. The chat loves you. You are the people's champ right now.
Hell yeah.
Great job. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Anytime.
You got it. Again,
Thanks,
Kyle Henderson, Bama Football on YouTube. I'm ready now. That was fun.
He's so good. And interesting there, Catch. He would disagree with us in 2 big ways. Either one of his scores, 31-24. He thinks 24 will lose the game. He thinks in a certain circumstance, 37 would lose this game. 38-37. Are you kidding me?
I think Kyle believes in Texas more than I do.
Well, here's a different way to ask the question I asked yesterday, Catch. If I could get Longhorn fans to sign up for a close loss, if I guarantee you're going to lose
38-37
and it's close, would you rather have 38-37 or would you rather have 17-14?
I mean,
if you have your choice.
I think the bigger question is, do you take 38-37, an all-timer?
Just either way.
It's played on ESPN Classics all the time.
You take that score.
Or take your chance.
Oh, okay. All right.
So you either lose by 1, your season's not derailed at all, it's an all-time great game, or
it could be
curtain number 2.
You're right. Or it could be 28-3.
And there's a goat behind the curtain and
Yeah. Oh, remember when they used to put the goats back there? That was an animal was my favorite.